first paper boat appeared on a rainy Tuesday. Nobody saw who left it. When Nurse Ji-eun began her morning rounds at Seoul Central Medical Center, she found a small blue paper boat resting on the windowsill inside room 412. She picked it up, smiling. Someone's child must have wandered in here. As she turned to throw it away, she noticed handwriting inside. "Please don't let him be lonely." She paused. Her eyes drifted toward the unconscious man lying quietly beneath the white hospital blanket. 3 weeks earlier, firefighters had pulled him from the ruins of a warehouse explosion on the outskirts of Seoul. His burns had healed. Most of his broken bones had begun to mend. But he had never opened his eyes. There was no wallet, no phone, no fingerprints in any police database. No missing person report matched his face. To the hospital, he was simply patient 412. The paper boat stayed. The following afternoon, another one appeared. Then another. Soon the nurses stopped asking where they came from. They simply placed each new boat beside the others. Some were yellow, some green, some folded from old homework sheets. Each carried a different message. "Today it snowed. I hope you aren't cold. The cherry blossoms are coming soon." Weeks became months. The windowsill slowly transformed into a colorful river of paper. By the 92nd day, there were 92 boats, every one of them made by the same small hands. That afternoon, 9-year-old Nari Kim carefully placed the newest boat beside the others. She stepped back and counted them. 92. She smiled proudly. "I didn't miss a single day." The unconscious man remained still. His breathing rose and fell beneath the blanket. The heart monitor continued its quiet rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. Nari walked closer. "My teacher asked why I still come." She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I told her heroes shouldn't wake up in an empty room." She giggled softly. I don't think she understood. Outside, spring rain tapped gently against the window. Nari reached into her backpack and removed a tiny firefighter helmet she'd made from folded cardboard. She placed it beside his hand. "I'll bring something better tomorrow." She picked up her backpack. "See you after school." She reached the door. "Tomorrow." The voice was barely louder than a whisper. Nari stopped. Slowly, very slowly, she turned around. The man's eyes were open, confused, searching, alive. Her backpack slipped from her shoulder. For several seconds, she simply stared. Then she ran. "Doctor!" Her voice echoed through the corridor. "Doctor!" He woke up. Within moments, the quiet hallway erupted into controlled chaos. Doctors rushed into room 412. Nurses checked every monitor twice. One adjusted his oxygen tube. Another checked his pupils. Dr. Kang Min-seo leaned over the bed. "Can you hear me?" The man blinked once. "Good. Can you tell me your name?" His lips moved. Nothing came out. A nurse helped him drink a little water. He tried again. "Daniel." Dr. Kang smiled. "Daniel what?" The answer came more slowly. "Daniel." His forehead tightened. Fragments of memory flickered through his mind. Smoke, sirens, a frightened child, a red fire engine. Then, Adebayo. Silence filled the room. "My name." He swallowed painfully. "Daniel Adebayo." Dr. Kang nodded with relief. "Welcome back, Mr. Adebayo. If you're enjoying this story so far, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the AfroK Tales, and tell us in the comments. If you were Nari, what message would you have written inside one of those paper boats? Now, let's continue. Daniel remembered his name. He remembered growing up in Lagos, Nigeria. He remembered his father teaching him that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing to move while afraid. He remembered earning a firefighting scholarship that brought him to South Korea 8 years earlier. He remembered falling in love with Korean culture. The language, the food, the discipline, the people who slowly became family. He remembered rising through Seoul's emergency rescue service until newspapers called him the Lion of Itaewon. Then he founded Adebayo Rescue Solutions, a company designing advanced emergency equipment used by firefighters across Asia. Everything after that disappeared into darkness. He looked toward the little girl standing quietly near the wall. You! His voice cracked. Who are you? She smiled shyly. My name is Nari. Do I know you? She shook her head. No. Then why? Her eyes drifted toward the paper boats. Because you know me. Daniel frowned. She pointed toward the faded scar above her left eyebrow. The apartment fire. Suddenly, the memory struck like lightning. Flames climbed the outside of a fifth-floor apartment. A little girl crying beside a broken window. Neighbors screaming from below. Daniel climbing the fire escape before the ladder truck even arrived. Glass exploding. Smoke swallowing everything. A tiny hand reaching toward him. He whispered, You were the little girl. Nari nodded. You carried me outside. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. You came back. Every day. Why? She answered as though it required no explanation. My grandfather says gratitude shouldn't have an expiration date. Daniel turned away. For the first time since opening his eyes, he cried. Not because of pain. Not because he couldn't remember the accident. But because while people from his own life had never come looking, a child he'd rescued once had refused to forget him. Later that afternoon, Nari returned with her grandfather. The old man entered carrying 2 food containers. One smelled richly of jollof rice. The other carried steaming kimchi stew. You must be Daniel. The old man smiled warmly. I'm Samuel Kim. Daniel laughed softly. That's a Korean first name with a Nigerian favorite meal. Samuel laughed louder. My daughter married a Nigerian engineer. So my granddaughter grew up eating kimchi with jollof. Nari raised her hand proudly. I like both. Samuel placed the food on the table. The nurses won't let you eat this yet. So I brought enough for everyone else. Within minutes the room filled with laughter. Nurses gathered around. Even Dr. Kong accepted a small bowl. Daniel watched quietly. For 92 days, this little family had unknowingly been keeping watch over a stranger. Now, the stranger finally had faces to remember. The following morning began rehabilitation. Dr. Choi Eun-hee wheeled Daniel into the therapy room. Sunlight poured through tall windows overlooking the hospital garden. Parallel bars stretched across the polished floor. Several patients practiced slow, careful steps. Daniel stared silently. I used to carry people out of burning buildings. Dr. Choi nodded. And today? She rested a reassuring hand on the wheelchair. Today we'll celebrate sitting without falling. Daniel smiled weakly. It sounds less impressive. It isn't. It's where every comeback begins. He placed both hands on the bed beside him. His muscles trembled. Every movement felt unfamiliar. He pushed. His body rose. For 3 seconds, he sat upright. Then exhaustion pulled him backward. He fell onto the pillows, breathing heavily. I can't even sit. Dr. Choi adjusted his blanket. You Saturday. I fell. You did both. She smiled. Tomorrow will make the sitting last longer. Daniel looked toward the therapy bars again. For the first time, they didn't look impossible. They simply looked far away. And somewhere beyond those bars, hidden beneath the smoke, the missing memories, and the unanswered questions, the truth about the warehouse explosion was waiting for him. The next morning, Daniel woke before sunrise. For a few seconds, he forgot where he was. The white ceiling, the steady rhythm of the heart monitor, the faint smell of antiseptic. Then reality returned. Room 412. 92 lost days. A body that no longer obeyed him. He slowly turned his head toward the windowsill. 92 paper boats rested there, glowing softly beneath the first rays of morning light. Each one represented a day he couldn't remember. Each one proved someone had remembered him anyway. A quiet knock interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Choi Eun-hee entered carrying a tablet. Good morning. Daniel smiled faintly. I've had better mornings. I expected that answer. She pulled a chair beside his bed. I reviewed your scans again. Daniel studied her expression. You found something? Nothing dangerous. She paused. But recovery will take patience. I've never been patient. I know. How? You've already apologized to 3 nurses for needing help. Daniel looked away. I don't like depending on people. Dr. Choi folded her arms. That may have been your greatest strength before. She smiled gently. It can't be anymore. By lunchtime, Nari burst into the room carrying another paper boat. This one doesn't count. Daniel laughed. I thought we stopped at 92. We did. This one's different. She placed it on his blanket. Instead of a message, there was a tiny drawing. A bridge. On one side stood a man wearing a firefighter's helmet. On the other side stood a little girl waving. Above them she had written, "Some bridges are people." Daniel stared at it for a long time. My grandfather helped me think of that. I like your grandfather. So do I. She climbed onto the visitor's chair. My teacher says people forget heroes. Daniel looked toward the window. Sometimes heroes forget themselves too. That afternoon began his first real rehabilitation session. The therapy room overlooked a peaceful courtyard filled with cherry blossoms. Several elderly patients practiced walking with canes. Others stretched carefully under the guidance of therapists. Daniel's eyes settled on the parallel bars. They looked ordinary, yet they frightened him more than any burning building ever had. Dr. Choi noticed. What are you thinking? I'm wondering whether courage feels different after fear wins. She considered the question. No. What changes? She pointed toward the bars. Is what you're afraid of. Daniel nodded slowly. He wrapped both hands around the cold steel. His fingers tightened. He pushed. Nothing happened. Again. His arms trembled violently. His shoulders burned. A third attempt. Slowly, his body lifted. His knees shook beneath him. For 2 brief seconds, he stood. Then gravity pulled him back into the wheelchair. Daniel closed his eyes. I couldn't do it. Before Dr. Choi could answer, applause echoed from the doorway. Nari clapped enthusiastically. You stood. I fell. You stood first. Mr. Samuel laughed behind her. My granddaughter always tells the important part of the story. Daniel couldn't help smiling. Perhaps she was right. Later that evening, Detective Han Ji-ho arrived. He introduced himself quietly. I handled the investigation into the warehouse explosion. Daniel's expression changed. Did you find out what caused it? Han hesitated. Officially, an electrical fault. And unofficially? The detective looked toward the closed door before answering. I've never believed that report. Daniel frowned. Why? The fire spread too quickly. The security cameras stopped recording exactly 7 minutes before the explosion. And he opened a folder. Someone removed every inspection file from the warehouse server before firefighters arrived. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. Fragments flashed through his mind. A meeting room. His business partner. Rows of rescue helmets. A heated argument. You can't sell these. Someone replied coldly. No one will know. Daniel suddenly grabbed the armrest. I remember. Both Detective Han and Dr. Choi looked at him. My company. We failed a safety inspection. Someone wanted me to approve defective rescue equipment. His breathing became uneven. I refused. Then, another memory surfaced. His business partner's face. Tund. Standing beside the warehouse office. Angry. Desperate. You'll destroy everything we've built. Daniel whispered. No. Detective Han leaned forward. What is it? My accident. He looked directly at the detective. I don't think it was an accident. Silence settled over the therapy room. Across Seoul, inside the luxurious headquarters of Adebayo Rescue Solutions, Tund Balogun stared at the evening news. The television showed Daniel beginning rehabilitation. The headline beneath the screen read, Rescued Fire Hero Takes First Stand After 92-Day Coma. Employees across the office quietly applauded. Tund switched off the television. No one noticed the fear spreading across his face. His assistant entered. The board wants to know whether Mr. Adebayo will return. Tund answered without looking up. He won't. And if he does? Tund slowly closed the folder lying on his desk. Inside were forged company documents, financial transfers, insurance claims, contracts worth millions. Everything depended on one assumption. Daniel would never speak again. Now, he had started remembering. Back in room 412, the evening sun painted golden light across the paper boats. Nari quietly arranged them into a perfect line. 92 boats. She smiled proudly. They kept you company. Daniel looked at them. No, he answered softly. They kept hope alive. Mr. Samuel placed a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder. My late wife used to say something. What? When people lose their way, they don't always need someone to carry them. Sometimes, he looked toward Nari, they only need someone who refuses to leave. Daniel felt something shift inside him. For years he had believed strength meant rescuing others. Now he was beginning to understand another kind of strength. The courage to let yourself be rescued. As night settled over Seoul, Daniel unfolded the little paper boat resting on his bedside table. Inside, Nari had written one final sentence before going home. Tomorrow will stand a little longer. Daniel smiled. Outside his window, the city lights shimmered across the Han River. Somewhere beyond them, the truth about the warehouse fire waited patiently. And for the first time since opening his eyes, Daniel was no longer afraid of remembering. If Daniel's journey is touching your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the AfroK Tales, and tell us in the comments. What do you think Daniel is about to remember next? The next week changed everything. Every rehabilitation session grew a little longer. Daniel could now sit without support for nearly a minute. He could transfer from the bed to his wheelchair with only a little help. And one bright Tuesday morning, he managed 4 shaky steps between the parallel bars. Nari celebrated as if he'd won an Olympic gold medal. I told you, she laughed, jumping excitedly. Tomorrow will be 5. Dr. Choi smiled. Let's master 4 before we argue with tomorrow. Even Daniel laughed. For the first time since waking up, laughter didn't hurt. That afternoon, Detective Han returned carrying a thick envelope. I've been reopening the warehouse case. He spread photographs across the bedside table. There are things that never made sense. Daniel studied them carefully. The warehouse, the burned offices, the destroyed loading bay. Then one photograph stopped him. His own office door. The lock had been forced open from the inside. Daniel frowned. I locked that office before the meeting. Detective Han nodded. Someone searched it after the explosion. What were they looking for? I think. He placed another document on the table. They were trying to find this. It was a quality inspection report. Every page was marked with red stamps. Failed. Daniel recognized his handwriting immediately. I wrote these notes. Yes, but something is missing. The signature. Daniel stared at the blank approval line. I never signed it. You refused. Another memory crashed into place. Tund standing across the conference table. We've already invested millions. Daniel shaking his head. If this equipment fails, firefighters will die. Tund's voice became cold. You're choosing strangers over your own company. Daniel remembered standing. I'll rebuild the company. I won't rebuild dead people. The memory ended there. His chest tightened. He was furious. Across the city, Tund received an unexpected phone call. The police have reopened the investigation. His face hardened. How much does Daniel remember? Nobody knows. He ended the call without another word. Walking to the office window, he looked over Seoul's skyline. Everything he owned, every luxury apartment, every expensive suit, every boardroom he now controlled, had been built during Daniel's 92 days of silence. If Daniel remembered everything, it would all disappear. Meanwhile, life inside room 412 became brighter each day. Nari arrived after school carrying a small cardboard box. I have a surprise. Daniel looked inside. Tiny paper boats. Blank ones. What are these for? She handed him a pen. You've read mine. Now it's your turn. He smiled. What should I write? She shrugged. Whatever you needed to hear while you were sleeping. Daniel thought for a long moment, then slowly wrote, "You are not forgotten." Nari folded the paper carefully. "We'll keep this one forever." Mr. Samuel watched quietly from the corner of the room. His eyes glistened. Sometimes children understood healing better than adults ever could. Later that evening, Detective Han received a call from the forensic laboratory. The recovered warehouse computer had finally yielded its encrypted files. Inside was a scheduled email. It had been written by Daniel the morning of the explosion. The message was addressed to government safety regulators. Attached were the failed inspection reports. The email had never been sent. Someone had deleted it minutes before the fire. Detective Han immediately drove back to the hospital. When Daniel read the recovered draft, his face turned pale. "I remember now." He closed his eyes. "I was going to report the company. You were exposing defective rescue equipment." Daniel nodded. "Tund begged me to wait. I refused." His breathing became uneven. "We argued. He followed me into the warehouse." "What happened next?" Daniel pressed his fingers against his forehead. "I drank some water." His voice grew quieter. It tasted strange. "I felt dizzy." The room started spinning. Then, the final memory returned. He saw Tund reaching for the emergency exit. He heard the warehouse alarm. Then, silence. Daniel slowly opened his eyes. "He left me there." The room became still. Detective Han didn't need any more answers. He already had enough to obtain an arrest warrant. The following morning, police investigators entered Adebayo Rescue Solutions headquarters. Employees stopped working as officers walked through the reception area. Tund stepped out of the executive elevator wearing his usual confident smile. "Can I help you, officers?" The lead investigator held up the warrant. "Tund Balagan, you are under investigation for attempted murder, corporate fraud, destruction of evidence, and obstruction of justice." The smile disappeared. Employees watched in stunned silence. No one spoke. No one defended him. As officers escorted him away, he looked back toward the executive office that had once belonged to Daniel. For 92 days, he had believed it would remain his forever. He was wrong. News of the arrest reached the hospital within the hour. Nari burst into room 412 carrying her phone. "They caught him." Daniel looked toward Detective Han. The detective simply nodded. "This is only the beginning. There will be a trial. There will be investigations. But the truth is finally moving." Daniel looked through the window toward the bright Seoul sky. 92 days earlier, he had been a nameless stranger lying alone in a hospital bed. Now he understood something far more important than who had betrayed him. He understood who had stayed. His eyes drifted toward the colorful row of paper boats. Some people entered your life because they needed something from you. Others entered simply because they couldn't bear to leave you alone. And those were the people worth holding on to. If you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to subscribe to the AfroK Tales, and comment below. Do you think forgiveness is possible after a betrayal like Tund's? In the final part, Daniel faces the biggest decision of his life. Not in a courtroom, but in his own heart. 3 months later, spring had settled gently over Seoul. Cherry blossoms danced outside the rehabilitation center as Daniel stood between the parallel bars. His hands still gripped the rails. His legs still trembled. But this time, he wasn't looking down. "Ready?" Dr. Choi asked. Daniel nodded. He shifted his weight forward. 1 step, another, then another. 8 careful steps. The entire therapy room burst into applause. Nari nearly dropped her backpack as she clapped. "I told you we'd get past 5. Mr. Samuel laughed so loudly that patients from the next room peeked inside. "I've been coaching him," he announced proudly. Dr. Choi folded her arms. "You've been counting. Moral support is coaching." Everyone laughed. For the first time since the warehouse explosion, Daniel didn't feel like a survivor. He felt alive. The criminal trial attracted national attention. News stations across South Korea covered every hearing. The evidence was overwhelming. The deleted inspection reports, the forged contracts, the surveillance footage. The altered company accounts. Most damaging of all, Daniel's unsent email warning the government about the defective rescue equipment. When Tund finally took the witness stand, the courtroom became silent. He looked directly at Daniel. "I never wanted to kill you. I only wanted more time." Daniel remained calm. "More time for what?" "To fix everything." "You mean hide everything?" Tund lowered his head. "I spent years building that company with you, and one mistake would have destroyed us." Daniel answered quietly, "It wasn't one mistake. It was thousands of dangerous products. Firefighters trusted our name. So did families waiting for them to come home." His voice never rose. "But you sold them danger." The courtroom remained silent. Tund had no answer. Several weeks later, the court found him guilty of fraud, attempted murder, evidence tampering, and criminal negligence. As officers escorted him away, he paused. "I'm sorry." Daniel looked at him for a long moment. "I forgive you." Tund's eyes filled with hope. Then Daniel continued, "But forgiveness doesn't erase responsibility. Justice and forgiveness could exist together." That was a lesson both men would carry for the rest of their lives. Daniel returned to Adebayo Rescue Solutions, but not as the man who had left it. He gathered every employee inside the company's auditorium. Many expected angry speeches. Others expected revenge. Instead, Daniel wheeled himself onto the stage and held up one small paper boat. The room became quiet. "For 92 days, I couldn't sign documents. I couldn't answer emails. I couldn't save anyone." He looked across the crowd. "But one little girl reminded me that people are never valuable because of what they can do. They're valuable because they're people." He unfolded the paper boat. Inside was the message he had written weeks earlier. "You are not forgotten. Our company forgot why it existed. We were supposed to protect lives. From today, no contract, no customer, no amount of money will ever become more important than that." The auditorium erupted into applause. Many employees stood. Some quietly wiped away tears. They weren't applauding a businessman. They were welcoming back a leader. A month later, Daniel invited Nari and Mr. Samuel to the newly renovated headquarters. Nari looked around in amazement. "So many windows." Daniel smiled. "I have something to show you." He led them into the lobby. In the center stood a beautiful glass sculpture. Inside floated 92 colorful paper boats. A bronze plaque beneath it read, "The 92 days, dedicated to every forgotten patient, and every person who chose to remember them." Nari covered her mouth. "You kept them." Daniel nodded. "They reminded me how to live." He turned toward the employees gathered nearby. "Beginning today, a percentage of every company profit will fund hospital programs for unidentified patients across South Korea. We'll help reunite families. We'll support rehabilitation. And no patient will spend months believing nobody remembers them." The room filled with applause once again. Dr. Choi smiled proudly. Mr. Samuel quietly whispered, "Your grandmother would have loved this." Nari slipped her small hand into Daniel's. "I think he already knows." That evening, they returned to room 412. The room was empty now. Another patient had already taken Daniel's old bed. Life inside the hospital continued, as it always would. Nurse June welcomed them warmly. "You came back." Daniel nodded. "I promised myself I would." He walked slowly to the windowsill. It was empty. He reached into his pocket, pulled out one final paper boat, and placed it exactly where the first one had rested months before. Inside, he had written just 4 words. "Someone will remember you." Nari smiled. Now the next patient won't feel alone. Daniel looked around the quiet room. "No, they won't." As they stepped into the hospital garden, the late afternoon sun painted everything gold. Children laughed near the fountain. Families walked beneath blooming cherry trees. Mr. Samuel settled onto a bench with a satisfied sigh. "I'm officially retiring from counting therapy steps." Nari giggled. "You never counted correctly anyway." "I counted enthusiastically." "That's different." Daniel laughed. I'll miss those terrible numbers. Mr. Samuel grinned. I'll still visit. Someone has to inspect the cafeteria food. Dr. Choi shook her head. That's not a real security job. It is if the soup tastes suspicious. Everyone laughed. The laughter echoed across the garden. Warm, unforced, peaceful. Nari suddenly looked at Daniel. I have one last question. What is it? She pointed toward the paper boat still tucked inside his jacket pocket. Do heroes ever stop needing help? Daniel looked toward the blossoms drifting through the air, then back at the little girl who had waited 92 days for a stranger to wake up. No, he smiled. The strongest heroes are the ones who finally learn to accept it. Nari nodded thoughtfully. I like that ending. Daniel looked toward Dr. Choi, then Mr. Samuel, then back at Nari. So do I. Together, they walked slowly down the garden path. Daniel still carried his walking cane. His steps were careful. His recovery wasn't finished. But he wasn't measuring life by how fast he walked anymore. He measured it by who walked beside him. And for the first time since the warehouse fire, he knew he would never walk alone again. Thank you for watching the AfroK Tales. If Daniel and Nari's journey touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe for more original AfroKorean stories, and share it with someone who believes that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life. Before you go, answer this in the comments. If you were Nari, would you have kept visiting a stranger for 92 days? Why or why not? Because sometimes, a single person who refuses to forget can help someone remember how to live.